This Saturday, FanDuel TV brings you coverage of some of the most valuable races in the world, including a major Kentucky Derby prep. It all begins at 12:40 Eastern on the other side of the globe with the world's richest horse race, the $20 million Saudi Cup. And later, back stateside, we'll have live on-site coverage of a massive day of racing at Oaklawn. At 5:10 p.m. Eastern, 3-year-old fillies vie for Kentucky Oaks points in the $400,000 Honeybee Stakes. And at 6:20 p.m. Eastern, find out if one of the top juvenile colts from last year, the number 7 Timberlake, can take home 50 Derby points in the $1.25 million Rebel Stakes. Tune in this Saturday as FanDuel TV brings you the best racing from around the globe, plus all the action on the road to the Kentucky Derby.
Welcome to our FanDuel TV stream as we get set for this massive Saturday over on FanDuel TV. Make sure you've got it at the ready. Download the FanDuel TV Plus app, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV. But our focus this morning is the Rebel Stakes. $1.25 million available in this grade 2 for this group of runners, headlined by Timberlake and Christina Blacker. She's part of the team with me here in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And Christina, in that tease, looking back to last year with Timberlake, that's what we're at this point in the year for some of these runners. And we saw just a couple of weeks ago with Fierceness, looking at last year with expectations remaining high. He didn't deliver. The big question today is for Timberlake. Can he deliver in the Rebel Stakes, as he will be the clear favorite in this race?
Yeah, Scott, I think we've seen some real brilliance from this class overall, but we've also seen some real inconsistencies in their form. We saw that with Fierceness, and we saw it a little bit with Timberlake in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. One thing that you'll notice if you go back and watch any of the coverage from last year, he got very hot, he got very warm, very washy. He seemed to have lost his race in the paddock and in the pre-parade ring and everything else leading up to when they actually left the starting gate. So I'm going to be keeping a really close eye on him today. I think it's definitely a theme we have to follow, and we have to follow whether or not he's going to take that step forward from age 2 to age 3.
Well, speaking of Fierceness, we're going to get to him by way of Andy Biancone, who's also with us here at Oaklawn Park in Hot Springs, Arkansas. She's actually on the backside right now with Fierceness. Before we get to Fierceness, good morning, Andy.
Good morning, Scott. Hi, Christina.
Timberlake, excuse me. We're not with Fierceness. It's Timberlake. What am I doing?
Scott, you had me really stressed out for a second. But anyway,
It's all right.
we're on the backside here with Timberlake. Obviously, we haven't seen him since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He ran a really game race, okay? This is a horse who won the Champagne, went to the Juvenile, finished a valiant 4th, was just kind of keen and got tired. So this is his 2024 debut, and hoping to pick up some Derby points, obviously, but we're going to be real quiet because he's taking a little snooze, a little pre-race snooze, and looking very handsome. Oh, yeah. Oh, big sigh. Yeah, big day ahead, and he knows it, but it's been pretty exciting seeing this horse train here at Oaklawn. I know he's been working well at the fairgrounds, but shipped over to Brad Cox's barn here just for this week and has been galloping happy over the surface. It's awesome that he's been able to get a feel of the track. And obviously we've seen him school 2 times and he's handled himself very, very well. But physically, even in the stall, just an outstanding looking horse. He's really grown and filled in since the Juvenile. He's always kind of been a big, heavy horse. I'm really excited. The more I look at him, the more I like his chances.
Andy, he's like, we're 7 hours away from game time for him. So, I mean, this is always something I feel like is brought up when we're able to. It's a good sign that he's resting the morning of. Smart horses rest the morning of, right?
100%. And horses are smart. They know when they're running. You know, the trainers, every work, every gallop, it's bringing them to peak on race day. So they really feel it within themselves when they're running. And they also know their race day routine, right? Some horses don't go to the track on race day. They walk in the morning. They're like, oh, it's game time. We're running today. And the fact that he's able to just be calm, be chill, He had his breakfast, now he's sleeping. It's excellent that he's conserving his energy for later.
Don't forget, you can get involved with the program. You got any questions for myself, for Christina, for Andy, we will tackle them for you. Make sure you get involved in the stream. But let's, Christina, take a look at the field for today's Rebel Stakes. Post time is at 6:23 Eastern time, and there's no question that Timberlake will be the favorite. The question, I think, is from a wagering perspective, which, of course, you can bet in the FanDuel Racing app. Who's the second choice? Who's the main threat to Timberlake, as we'll take you back to his one of his runs in the Champagne?
Yeah, the Champagne was a really impressive performance from Timberlake. I think he did everything right on this day. He saved ground. He tucked in along the inside. He handled cover. He handled being weighted off the pace that day and then swung out as they turned for home. He's going to pour it on here in the late stages. This was over a sloppy track surface. This is his grade 1 win. And let's remember, Fierceness was in this race. This is the race where Fierceness did not show up, kind of got shuffled back and had his own set of troubles. If you come back in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and you look at the number that he ran, at least on Thorograph, if you're a Thorograph player, you ran the same figure in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile that he did in the Champagne. Now we're talking about a 1-turn race versus a 2-turn race. So sometimes you can, just factor that in a little bit into how you're comparing those numbers. But I think what we saw from Timberlake overall in the Juvenile was his performance. It was just the fact that Fierceness was that much better that day. Fierceness ran a career best. Timberlake kind of stayed on par, stayed pretty even. I love this video right here because, again, as I mentioned, we're going to have to really keep an eye on him. It's going to be a big crowd today. They're expecting 45,000 people at Oaklawn. So we want to see him acting this afternoon as he is right here in this schooling session. And Andy, I love that they took him over kind of towards the infield, it looks like, from this shot, right? Really giving him a look at all the different areas and angles at Oaklawn.
Yes, absolutely. And I thought he was very well behaved. We saw a lot of the runners for the Rebel School inside the infield. I've actually, this is my first year doing the races here at Oaklawn, but I heard they actually do bring the horses out for a lap on the infield before they go out on the track. I don't know if this is a rumor, if I misunderstood somebody, but I think that's the general course of action here on Stakes Day. But I'm just so happy with the way Timberlake looks. I saw Fierceness before the Holy Bull, and he really didn't change much physically from 2 to 3. He literally looked about the same as he did when he ran the Juvenile, and that's not always a great sign. Granted, he didn't have a great trip in the Holy Bull. He got caught really far wide and got a lot of kickback, etc. Got stuck behind a slow pace. But that lack of physical change really kind of concerns me for the 2-year-old champion. I think physically Timberlake looks awesome. Had a couple of opportunities to see some of the other horses too. I saw Carbone yesterday morning. It's insane. I saw that horse when he took on Allowance Company here at Oaklawn, and he just smoked the field. And Scott Hazelton was like, this is the Kentucky Derby horse right here. But anyways, he's tightened up a lot. He looks really fit, really on his toes. And I think that's an excellent indication that this horse is doing well too. So definitely some other horses other than Timberlake who we got to watch out for making that step up.
Yeah, we'll get to Carbone in a second. First of all, I don't know if y'all see, we've got some viewers internationally joining us. We've got Mikey from Guatemala joining us here on the stream. Mary's joining us. She's saying how she feels that Timberlake looks the part he does. And Omar checking in from El Paso, Texas. So thanks for joining us here on the FanDuel TV stream. But we got a quote from Brad Cox as we'll wrap up the discussion with Timberlake with this quote. His last work was a big league move. He's a big league horse. He's a grade 1 winner. I think the Rebel's going to be a good race. We're really looking forward to getting him back to the races to start this year. And that is, this is the jumping off point. So that's one thing we do got to keep in mind. But the speed figures, whatever you look at, say that he certainly looks as though he is the horse that, if he runs those types of races, is the most likely to come away with a win, and that makes him the favorite. Let's take a look at the Derby leaderboard while we got a second. We had a change at the top after last week's run in the Risen Star, Sierra Leone. Is it fair to say, Christina, that he's now the number 1 in this class for the time being after his run in the Risen Star?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think, Sierra Leone really hinted at so much ability last year in the Remsen, and he was still sort of learning. I thought the addition of blinkers from Chad Brown, just the extra time, the time to mature of the horses that can compete in the Kentucky Derby, he is certainly atop this list, not only on points, but really with what we've seen from him out on the racetrack. That's not to say that one of these horses today can't really jump up with a big performance, but he is squarely in that position. You do notice that Timberlake is on the board. He does have some points, 16 points, Just Steel just behind him. You mentioned earlier, Scott, wondering who might be the second choice. I think it will be Just Steel. I think if you go back and look at the Southwest, he was very keen on the outside. He ended up settling well, but he was close and involved in this early pace scenario, and he's the only one that stuck around. Carbone, a lot of the others that were up there and pressing the pace early, the race really fell apart, and I give Just Steel a lot of credit for digging deep for this second place finish. Mystic Dan was on the best part of the racetrack all the way around there. It was a beautiful ride from Brian Hernandez. The rail was good that day, and I think he benefited not only from liking the off track, but from being in the best position. If you're coming away from the Southwest, I think you really have to upgrade what Just Steel did and consider that in your handicapping for today.
He is a throwback Lucas horse, right? I mean, he reminds me, remember Bravazzo when Lucas just, I mean, time and time again, he'd come over and he'd run. He wasn't always winning, but he was always there. And for him, one of the quotes that we got on this race was that he felt that, he might need even this race, and which is crazy because this horse hasn't missed a beat. And he debuted back in June, and he's been running consistently every month, and then sometimes 2 months, and again 2 times this month. So I like this horse. I wouldn't be shocked if he's able to pull off the win. But as Andy mentioned with Carbone, I was infatuated with this horse at Churchill, and then when we saw him at Oaklawn, and then he ran the bad race in the Southwest. This was on New Year's Eve before we turned it loose in Hot Springs, Arkansas, Andy and myself, to party like it was the end of 2022. But Andy, I think and I tend to overthink things. I hope that you figured that out about that with me. But I feel like this horse in the Rebel, the fact that he only had 2 workouts off of that win to get ready for the Southwest Stakes was what caught up with him. And I think that the rescheduling of the Southwest Stakes for some of these horses, and him specifically, caught up with him. He builds off of that race. He's had a work sense as well. I think we'll see that version, more towards that version of Carbone that we saw in his first 2 races than what we saw in the Southwest.
Scott, absolutely. I actually had the opportunity to speak to Steve Asmussen this morning, and I said, does Carbone have an excuse last time out? And he said, well, Andy, we have to remember the track here at Oaklawn was frozen for 2 weeks. So all the horses at Oaklawn Park were jogging in the barns, jogging in the exercise wheel. They weren't really training, and they missed a lot of works. So that, for a big, heavy horse like Carbone, could really negatively impact their performance. Thankfully, they did postpone the Southwest. That on top of the lack of works on top of meeting a really deep field, I think was kind of what got the most of him last time. But now, like you said, Scott, has worked consistently. And I saw him yesterday morning. He looked fantastic, looked tight, looked fit, looked ready. I think he's coming into this Rebel much more prepared.
I think he will be a better version than what we saw in the Southwest Stakes. And if that's good enough, we will find out. Line them up and we'll find out at 5:23 Central, 6:23 Eastern time. Now, the interesting thing, too, about this, Christina, is Steve Asmussen goes to Isaac Castillo. I don't think I've ever seen Steve Asmussen go to Isaac Castillo, but he does in this situation because Ricky Santana just rode Skelly in the Saudi Sprint runner-up finish about an hour or so ago. So Castillo goes there, and Asmussen has another one in here, and he's got Tyler Gaffleone riding Dymatic, colt by Gunrunner for Winchell Thoroughbreds, who just broke his maiden, now jumps into the deep end of the pool. We saw them try this last week with Hall of Fame. That didn't work. Do you think that this performance or this horse is good enough to make it work against this group today?
I really do. Of the Asmussen horses, and you can see how green he was in the stretch in that race as he's angling out Dymatic. I think of the entire field, this is the horse that has the biggest room for improvement, the biggest ceiling in front of him. Because you look at the race that we just showed you, he did everything right until that last 16th of a mile. He rated, he relaxed, he was along the inside. He was in a beautiful path that day. Again, the rail was pretty good on Southwest Day because remember, this race that we're looking at or we just saw was on that afternoon. Snuck through along the inside, angled out like a pro as they turned for home. And then he just got to looking around. He was a little lost out there on the lead, but it was really clear how much he had left to finish with. I think Dematic has the biggest ceiling today. He would not surprise me at all. And if I have to pick an Asmussen horse, I'm absolutely going this way. I'm glad to hear you guys' thoughts about Carbone and about the missed training because I didn't really account for that. To me, looking at the Southwest, he just packed it in. He stopped at the quarter pole. I didn't see a real excuse, but if it is the training, then yes, you can come back and give him another chance. But I'm still going to push pretty hard on Dematic if I have to choose between the Asmussen horses.
Before we get one more look at the favorite Timberlake behind Andy's shoulder, did you get anything from Steve Asmussen, Andy, on Dematic, the 6?
I got something from him on Lagnos. Lagnos, super nice horse. I remember seeing him in the Smarty Jones. Gorgeous horse. Son of Cantharos. Kind of bred to be for speed, honestly, by Cantharos out of a Speightstown mare, but gorgeous. Physically, I think can handle the distance. Has actually run in contention with some pretty salty company. Last time in the Smarty Jones, Steve said that they just were a bit too aggressive with this horse, putting him position-wise in the race. When I say aggressive, they kind of asked him to take the lead, and that's just not really his style. So they're looking for more to sit behind the pace today and give him something to run at. But Steve says we have not seen the best of Lagnos either. So honestly, all the Asmussen horses kind of seem live in there.
All right, Andy, two hands, okay? Use two hands. Grab the camera. Don't drop it because you can't afford to break another screen. You've broken about 9 screens this year so far. Grab that. Also, don't lose. Do you have an AirPod in? Don't lose the AirPod.
This is my ninth pair.
Later. So go ahead and give us one more look. One more look at the favorite for the Rebel Stakes.
Okay, here we go. Oh my gosh, he's like passed out like a little baby.
Oh wow!
Oh my gosh, don't wake him up. Give him his beauty sleep.
Don't you just want to crawl in there with him and lay on him? You ever do that as a kid?
I do. I still do that.
That is great stuff. We'd love to see that live look at Timberlake, the favorite for today's Rebel Stakes. I wish we had time to take a nap, Christina.
Well, sleep is for the weak. Well, not in Timberlake's case, but
no. No. All right. Don't forget, you can join the coverage over on FanDuel TV. And most importantly, don't forget to take advantage of the no sweat win bet up to $10 in the FanDuel Racing app on today's Rebel Stakes. Make sure you got the FanDuel Racing app downloaded and at the ready. And we look forward to the coverage. We'll be kicking off. We'll start the coverage actually in less than an hour. We'll get underway at 12:30 Eastern time. We'll be heading over to the infield, road to the Derby, road to the Oaks today. And don't forget the Honeybee Stakes, a key Oaks prep for the 3-year-old fillies. Our on-site coverage gets underway in less than an hour. Myself, Christina, Caleb, Andy, of course, and Caton. And thanks to Lorena joining us from Ontario, California. We had somebody check in from Dubai. Oscar joining us from Dubai. We've got Mikey in Guatemala. Mary and Omar joining us from El Paso. We appreciate the time. For Andy, Christina, I am Scott. Join us over on FanDuel TV. We've got 12 races lined up and a huge undercard as well, as it is Rebel Stakes Day at Oaklawn Park on FanDuel TV.